To My Future #1 Fan. Written by L.A. Witt. Narrated by Michael Ferraiuolo. Chapter 1. Adam. 5 years ago. "Honey, it's okay to give up and come home." My mom's text made my heart sink. She'd sent me dozens just like it, especially over the last few weeks, but it wasn't what I needed today. Okay, I never needed that shit, but today I was already too close to doing exactly what she suggested. Going home to all the people who'd laugh at me for ever thinking I could make it big. Going back to life in a small-town closet. Going back to feeling like no one and nothing. I knew I'd hit rock bottom when that world sounded more appealing than the constant beatdown of this one. I glanced up from my phone and looked around the diner. It wasn't all that busy today, and my 2 tables were taken care of. One had just gotten their food, and the other's meals were still cooking, so I had a moment to check my texts while I waited for the order to come up. I was starting to think I shouldn't look at my messages at work, though. All they did was depress me, and I was already feeling pretty fucking low over the job I had, and the one I couldn't get. But hey, the universe was apparently thinking, the morning is still young, so why not dogpile at him a little more? That was the only possible explanation for my agent picking that exact moment to text me. "You ready for this afternoon's audition?" Before I could respond, she added, "This is a big one, sweetie, don't bail on me." I felt sick as I typed out, "I'll be there, I promise." Would I be there? Would I really? Because how many times had it been a big one and just turned out to be a big waste of time and energy? I'd show up, queasy with nerves, pull off an amazing audition anyway, walk out thinking I was God's gift to acting, and then feel like utter garbage when I didn't get a call back. What was the point? Why did I keep bothering? "Honey, it's okay to give up and come home." I sighed. Truth was, I'd already given up. I was already working on coming home. I hadn't told anyone yet because I didn't want to admit it, but I was done. It was over. Hollywood was going to be one of those faded dreams I'd laugh about someday. Or cry about. Like I hadn't done enough of that recently as reality had set in. I was a failure. Just another starry-eyed kid who'd come to Tinseltown and, "Order up!" Paco, the line cook, barked. His voice jerked me back into reality. I shoved my phone into my back pocket and started collecting the plates. I was almost to the table when I realized they were hash browns instead of home fries. Damn it. Then I glanced at the ticket and, to my horror, realized they were hash browns because that was what I'd written down. Son of a bitch. Why did I have to screw up the hot guy's order? Oh, right, because it was going to be one of those days, and the universe was having a ball at my expense. And dear God, this guy was hot. That wasn't unusual in LA, but he wasn't like the Abercrombie and Fitch models who seemed to populate the city. He was sandy blonde and a little scruffy, with cheekbones I desperately wanted to touch, and blue eyes that made me forget basically everything when he looked at me. If I had to guess, he was a handful of years older than me. He might have been 30, give or take a year. He had a soft smile that didn't seem phony like so many other people I'd met since I'd moved here. Everything about him was cute and seemed perfectly genuine, and seriously, why did I have to screw up his order? Probably because I'd been so flustered the whole time. As it was, he'd had to repeat himself twice, after my dumbass had been too distracted by his voice, or his eyes, or whatever had made my brain fizzle out at that particular moment. And now I'd brought him the wrong food. It figured. A guy who was 1,000% my type, and I'd already made such an idiot of myself that this would definitely not be the day I worked up the courage to ask for someone's number. Shame. I would have loved to have this guy's number. Schooling my expression, I set one of the plates down in front of him. "I'm sorry, I accidentally got you hash browns instead of home fries, so—" "It's okay." He smiled up at me, gorgeous eyes sparkling. "I like hash browns, so don't worry about it." "Oh, Are you sure? I can have it remade, and it's fine. I promise. I was still going to knock some of it off his bill, but I set the plate down anyway. And then his expression faltered. Oh, I ordered ham, not bacon. Shit. I clapped a hand over my mouth. Great. Now I'd fucked up his order and cursed. Face on fire, I reached for the plate. I'm sorry, I'll get you another. No, it's fine. The smile came back, thank God. Really, take it easy. Could you just get me a side of ham to go with it? I did not deserve a customer who was this easygoing. Thanks. I'm sorry, again. Don't worry about it. As if for emphasis, he picked up one of the bacon strips and bit off a piece. If he was just humoring me, he was doing a damn good job of it. Okay, I exhaled. I'll, be right back. While he ate, I went back into the kitchen and asked Paco for a side of ham. As I stood back there and waited, I felt like such an incompetent asshole. I was never going to be good at this job. I could memorize lines for an entire play, but I always managed to forget something on an order or get something wrong. It wasn't even because I was too distracted by this hot dude. Everyone in LA was hot, for God's sake. I just sucked at my job. It really was a miracle I hadn't been fired, but the day wasn't over yet. Why am I still here? At the diner, in LA? Fuck it. Yeah, it's time to get the fuck out. Feeling equal parts sick and determined, I found a pen and paper and quickly wrote out my 2 weeks' notice. When I got home, I'd write a similar note to my landlord. Then I'd figure out how to buy enough gas to get back to Missouri and, well, I'd go from there. The hot guy's side of ham was ready, so I folded the note, slid it into my back pocket, and took the food out to him. He smiled at me again, making me weak in the knees because, God, he was just so... Hey, could I get some coffee over here? A woman in a suit gestured with an empty cup. Right. Coffee. Customers. I stole another glance at the hot guy and then got back to work. A few more tables filled up. I flitted from the one to the next, trying like hell to keep track of who was still waiting for what, who was drinking decaf, who had already told me twice he didn't want more coffee, and which table had asked for their check. So shocking that my tips were trash and my mood was getting worse. It really was time to just quit this stupid job, ditch my shithole apartment, and get out of LA. I clearly did not belong here. No point in staying, no point in going to that audition. My heart sank deeper. I didn't want to disappoint my agent by not showing up, and I didn't want to give up my dream, never mind my ticket out of my hometown. But it wasn't like I'd get the part. I'd gotten a few scattered roles in commercials, but every time I went in for a TV pilot or a movie, crickets. So why waste the gas and time, not to mention pay for parking, just to be let down again? I might as well cut my losses and skip the audition. That would give me more time to pack for my drive of shame back to Missouri. My cute and infinitely patient customer requested his check, and I was both relieved and disappointed. I wouldn't have another chance to screw up his order, but I also wouldn't have his gorgeous face to make my day feel slightly less shitty. And damn, when I came back to pick up his bill, he'd tipped me 20%. Why weren't more people as sweet as he was? And why didn't they come into the diner during my shifts? As he put his wallet away and I started clearing up his dishes, he laid a weathered blue notebook on the table. Listen, before I go. He chewed his lip, then looked up at me kind of shyly as he tapped the ragged leather cover of the notebook. Would you mind signing a page in this? I blinked. Was this some kind of joke? I kept my poker face somehow and warily asked, What is it? He laughed, self-consciously, and flipped to a blank page. I realized a long time ago how many servers in Los Angeles are actors trying to break into Hollywood. And it occurred to me that any one of them could be the next big thing. There's no telling who it'll be. Some of the shyness faded as he looked right in my eyes and added, "It could be you." I stared at him and shit. I suddenly wanted to cry. Like, seriously. Just break down an ugly cry right there in the diner because of 4 words I hadn't realized I'd needed to hear. It could be you. Somehow, I managed to choke back those sudden emotions and croak, "Seriously?" His smile was gorgeous, and he didn't sound the least bit patronizing as he said, "Why not?" "Yeah, Adam, why not?" With a lump in my throat, I shakily took his book and looked down at the blank page. This was the first time someone had ever asked me for an autograph. Kinda felt like I should make it count, or at least say something to acknowledge that he'd given me the encouragement I needed today, but without sounding like a complete dork. Finally, with tears in my eyes and a smile pulling at my lips, I wrote beside a faint coffee ring, "To my future #1 fan, Adam Jacobson." He took the book, read the inscription, and closed the cover as he smiled up at me. "Thanks, and good luck, Adam." "Yep, so gonna cry before this shift is over." "Thank you." As I collected his dishes and headed back to the kitchen, I realized I was smiling for real. For the first time in a long time now that I thought about it. After being discouraged at every turn, told to just give it up and let it go, some stranger had come along and said the words I hadn't known I needed to hear. It could be you. Yeah, maybe it could. Why the fuck not? So right then and there, as I started putting the plates and silverware in the overloaded sink, I vowed to make it to this afternoon's audition after all, and I promised myself I'd blow it out of the water. Chapter 2. Brian. Present day. "Get back in here, guys!" Julian called from the living room. "Brian, your boy's about to get his award!" I rolled my eyes and headed back in. My boy, yeah, I wished. But with my freshly topped-off wine, I followed everyone from the kitchen and dropped onto the sofa between Julian and Quinn. It was our annual Filmmaker Association Awards gathering. Jeans, t-shirts, and so much wine. And this was the award we'd all been chomping at the bit for tonight. Or at least I had. On screen, some actress I didn't recognize was at the podium, in the middle of the stage, wearing some god-awful thing that made me think she'd skinned a giraffe, and she was reading off the nominees. "Think he'll win?" Julian whispered. "He better," I said into my wine glass. "Did you see this film?" Julian snorted and gave my arm a playful smack. "Girl, you know I saw it. But that doesn't mean the stuffy old white guys who vote for this stuff appreciated it like we did." "If he doesn't win," Tammy said from where she was sitting cross-legged on the floor, "then these awards are meaningless." "Pretty sure they are meaningless," Quinn said. "But let's hope they do right by Brian's boy." I rolled my eyes again. Sometimes I wondered if it had been a mistake to let my group of friends know what a shameless crush I had on Adam Jacobson. If it was, it couldn't top my biggest mistake, being brave enough to ask for his autograph, but too much of a chicken to ask for his number back when he'd been a waiter. He'd been out of my league back then, but now? I couldn't even see his league anymore. Except, well, from my best friend's sofa, while we watched movie stars in overpriced clothing lavish each other with awards. On the screen, the actress had finished naming off the nominees. "And the Filmmaker Association Award goes to..." She paused for effect as she opened the envelope. In Julian's living room, my friends and I sat on the edges of our seats, wine glasses in hand, and held our breath. She pulled the card out and finally said, "Adam Jacobson in Haystack!" We were all on our feet so fast, it was a wonder nobody's glass went tumbling. We high-fived and cheered as if we'd actually been involved in the movie, or in Adam's amazing performance. It was ridiculous, but it was fun, so who cared? It was about time, too. Adam had been passed over by the Filmmaker Association 2 years in a row, and it would have been a travesty if they'd snubbed him again this time. On the other hand, I'd probably never hear the end of it. After all, his fame and my crush had been a running joke ever since I'd told my friends about the time we'd met. They hadn't believed me until I'd shown them the autograph in my notebook. At least they'd finally stopped ribbing me about that damn thing. Now, if they'd stopped ribbing me about how just seeing him on the screen made me swoon, I'd be good. But I wasn't banking on that. Especially not now that he was walking up to the stage in a tailored black tux, smiling so big he could have lit up the whole auditorium. He accepted the award and hugged the actress. Then she stepped aside and he took his place at the podium. My God, he'd grown up since the first time I saw him. The tux was a far cry from the diner uniform he'd been wearing, and it hugged his body like a dream. He'd filled out in the last few years, looking less gaunt and so beautifully fit. Shame the tux covered up that six-pack. For the last couple of years, he'd sported a trimmed beard that made his full lips look amazingly sexy. The beard, along with his meticulously spiked brown hair, fuck, he was hot. Why didn't I get your number in the diner that day? Oblivious to me ogling him through the TV, Adam smiled at the crowd. Wow, this is amazing, and I've got a lot of people to thank, but I swore a long time ago I'd dedicate my first award to someone who probably doesn't remember me. I was a waiter, and not a very good one, and I wasn't getting anywhere with acting. I had an audition that afternoon, but I wasn't going to go. I was ready to pack it in, go back to Missouri, and move on. I had my 2 weeks' notice in my back pocket and everything. He paused for a breath. But even after I let your coffee get low, and after I brought you hash browns when you asked for home fries and kept screwing up your order, you were still nice to me. Anyone else would have been asking my manager to give them a discount, but not you. He laughed softly. You even tipped me. Everyone in Julian's living room was very, very still. Oh my God, Quinn whispered beside me. Is he talking about? Yes, I hissed. Shh. On screen, Adam continued. You tipped me. You smiled at me, and before you left, he paused when his voice started to get shaky. Before you left, you asked for my autograph. You said you knew a lot of waiters in LA were trying to break into Hollywood and there was no telling who might make it big. His voice wavered again, and he put a hand to his lips as he cleared his throat. When he continued, the words were still trembling. You told me it could be me. It probably didn't seem like anything to you, but that little conversation and the chance to sign that notebook you were carrying around was what I needed to get my ass to that audition that afternoon. He looked right at the camera, smiling broadly. I got the part. And after that, I got other parts, and now, 5 years after you gave me that little boost, he held up his trophy, and I swore he really was looking right at me. I never even knew your name, but I hope you're watching, because I'm dedicating this to you. The audience on the screen went wild, standing up and applauding as music played him off the stage. Here, in the living room, everyone was silent. Jaws slack, eyes wide, silent. One by one, heads turned to me. I was the first to speak. Did that just happen? Everyone nodded mutely. I swallowed. Holy... That? Julian blew out a breath. Oh, that was unreal! Un-fucking real! Tell me about it. I wiped a hand over my face and realized it was shaking. I was shaking all over, actually. The surge of adrenaline and God knew what else had me so jittery. I couldn't sit still. Without a word, I got up and headed into the kitchen with my still full wine glass. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, only that I needed to move before this sudden nervous energy got out of control. My friends hung back, which was kind of surprising. I fully expected them to trail after me and fire off questions, but they didn't. Maybe they knew that I'd been shocked by the speech. that it was overwhelming. Maybe they were giving me some breathing room, and thank Christ for that. Maybe it was just because they knew damn well I couldn't cope with spotlights, and I felt about 1,000,000 of them pointed at me right then. In the kitchen, I set my glass down before I dropped it, and pressed my palms onto the counter. Eyes closed, I breathed in and out slowly. I couldn't process it yet. I tried not to think about how many people had seen that, or how many might be talking about it. For all I knew, they'd forgotten it as quickly as I'd forgotten all the other acceptance speeches tonight, but I was somehow certain everyone and their mother was talking about it, about me. In his speech, Adam said he doubted I'd remember meeting him, but I remembered. I'd replayed it 1,000 times in my head. I remembered the first time I ever saw him in a movie and nearly fell out of my seat because I'd have recognized that beautiful face anywhere. I remembered coming home afterward and opening my notebook to that page. I hadn't been at all surprised when his name matched the one in the credits. I just hadn't imagined that he'd remembered. I wondered if he had any idea how much I'd had to psych myself up to ask him for his autograph. I'd done it a few times before. I hadn't been lying about getting autographs from waiters who might be up and coming, but the prospect of asking someone had never intimidated me like it had with him. Even while he'd been flustered and frustrated with his job, even while he'd been so obviously down and depressed, there'd been a light in him, some dormant charisma. There'd been no way of knowing if he was an actor or if he'd aspired to be, but I'd known right then that he could command my full attention any time he wanted to. This was someone brave enough to not only stand in the limelight, but bask in it, and even now I envied him as much as I wanted him. In the years since, I'd sometimes wondered if he'd thought I was creepy or ridiculous for asking him to sign my book. Or if he thought I was just being patronizing when I'd said, "It could be you." I'd meant every word, though. Knowing my encouragement had left an impression? That he'd needed a push that day? My God. What if I hadn't worked up the courage? What if I'd been the shy coward I usually was? Footsteps on the linoleum brought me back into the present, and I turned to see Julian, Quinn, and Tammy coming in. Julian had an odd smirk on his lips. I inclined my head. What? Well, honey, he shoved his iPad into my hands. I think you're about to be famous. My stomach lurched, but before I could say I didn't want to be famous, he tapped a long nail on the screen, and a video started. Outside the award show venue, a red-headed reporter in a white suit spoke into an oversized microphone.
Adam Jacobson's win was no surprise, but his speech has Hollywood and fans alike talking. Who was this mystery man? Does he even know he has the newly minted Filmmaker Association Award winner's autograph?
I gulped. Whoa. Beside me, Tammy squealed, clapped a hand over her mouth, and shoved her phone at me. On it, another reporter was speaking. I'm hearing from Los Angeles this morning that they want to find the man who asked for Adam Jacobson's autograph, and if the autograph can be verified, they're willing to fly him out to be on the show with Jacobson himself. My jaw fell open. What? Another reporter appeared.
We caught up with Adam backstage to find out more about how that autograph might be tracked down.
The screen shifted to Adam, still grinning from ear to ear in his tux with a microphone in his face. If he's got the real autograph, he shrugged innocently, then winked not so innocently at the camera. He'll know what the inscription says. I could feel my friends' stares like burning spotlights. My heart pounded. I still hadn't gotten my head around all of this. And now people wanted to fly me to L.A. to see Adam in person? On TV? What the hell? Quinn whistled. You might want to check Twitter, babe. My mouth went dry as I took out my phone and opened the Twitter app. Hashtag whose book did Adam sign was already trending. People were tweeting at Adam, posting photos of autographs, and speculating about what the inscription must have said, and because it was social media, There were also people telling him to die, calling him homophobic names, and raging that he didn't deserve the award. "What are you gonna do?" Julian asked. My first instinct was to say I was going to do absolutely nothing. As much as I wanted to see Adam again, he was a package deal now. Lights, camera, Adam. And who was to say he wanted to see me for real? Maybe he just wanted to give me that little hat tip, make a tearjerker of a speech so people would be talking about him, and... "Brian," Julian touched my shoulder. "Whatever you're thinking, stop." I blinked. "Huh?" He huffed, rolling his eyes. "I know you, sweetheart, and you're trying to talk yourself out of it because it'll mean attention from a lot of people, and because you're the kind of guy who's stunned when someone pings him on Grindr, so you're in denial that guy," he pointed at the iPad, "might genuinely want to see you." Well, I had to give the man credit. He definitely knew me. Tammy inclined her head. "You've been kicking yourself for years over not getting his number. Now you have a chance to see him again." "Yeah," I gulped. "Well, on a talk show. Well, on TV in front of..." I waved a hand because if I actually said 1,000,000 people, there was a good possibility I'd puke. "So, would you rather go on TV and be nervous?" Quinn asked. "Or pass up this opportunity and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened?" I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because I didn't have a damned argument, and fuck my friends for knowing exactly how to talk me out of my own stupid doubts. Well, I guess I could tweet at him. It'll probably get lost in the shuffle, but it's worth a try, right? "Of course," Julian nudged my arm. "Go for it." I swallowed hard, then, fingers a little shaky, I opened a new tweet and typed out, "I think it might be me, Adam. From your #1 fan." It wasn't the exact quote, but he'd get the idea. I added the hashtag and mentioned Adam's Twitter handle so he might hopefully see it. Then I held my breath, hit tweet, and watched in horror as the message sent and joined the masses talking about Adam, the autograph, and me. Had I really just said that? That was the best thing I could come up with, a dorky fanboy tweet that was so awkwardly me it was sickening? Fuck. No taking it back. I could delete it, but then I'd have to come up with something else to say, and... "Do you think he'll find it?" Tammy asked. "I mean, there's thousands of tweets popping up." "I don't know." I shrugged, as if I didn't care nearly as much as I actually did. As if I wasn't as anxious, embarrassed, or excited as I actually was. I guess we'll find out.